Okay, now back to the mystery history. Dolerite ball at the Unfinished Obelisk. So we're going to start off at the end of this presentation. The end of the presentation is that the quarry of Aswan, Egypt is
only 26 inches wide at its widest point. As his workers scrape the bottom of the trench with their dolerite pounders, they respectfully avoid removing any of the granite.
Give me a break. There are scoop marks in the granite at Aswan Quarry, Egypt. But the scoop marks are not from these, what do they call them, pound stones?
Hopkins has been at the task for 7 days when Lena approaches him to view his progress. Lena is not impressed, to say the least, for Hopkins had made very little headway, but proposed that he speed things up using more modern techniques. This is not the first time Hopkins has been involved with Lena, and...
Alright, so there's that. I mean...
more ridges to...
So, there are these scoop marks, okay? And, it wouldn't even make sense for them to be on many of the surfaces. Clearly, there is another process at work here. When I see these kind of irregular, squared scoop patterns, it makes me think of what the ground or what the earth looks like from the cymatics of the vibrations of an earthquake where it makes square shapes. There's a video... Be very scared if you see the ocean looking like this and it has like these square waves on it like that. And that's indicative of a subterranean disturbance like earthquake that could lead to a tsunami or something like that. But the largest monolithic granite stone at the Aswan Quarry in Egypt is surrounded by these interesting shapes in the area. Not just the stone itself, with somewhat muted, similar scoop marks of relatively equal dimensions, though not exact. They're all around it, and I don't know what the prevailing theory really is. I mean, it's so ridiculous to think that it was pounded out with these stone balls. But the stone balls were found in the area, and they do kind of match the contours, but they're from a different area, and they wouldn't explain things like this. These depths. Now, there are the stone circles kind of fit in there, but it's almost like it was shot blasted with those things or something else. They could be a byproduct of some kind of a process. They are a different material, but anyway... So we're going to keep that in mind, okay, as we begin our discussion of concrete. And I was just looking at some disasters, okay, and we're going to focus on France. And we're going to focus on concrete. So let's talk about the terminal collapse at Paris Airport, Charles de Gaulle. De Gaulle. I was there in 2005. And as a result of this collapse, I missed my connection at France's Charles de Gaulle International Airport. Why? Because the previous year, in May, the concrete used in the one-year-old structure had deteriorated, and there was an accident. When the roof of the airport's Terminal 2E collapsed. Okay, so I remember that, and it was a pain, and I had 50 minutes to make a connection, and I needed about an hour and a half because the first 30 minutes of the 50 minutes time, I was basically on a bus waiting to get from the plane into the customs where I had to go out, go through customs, go back through security, and then board. And I had to be at the gate 20 minutes prior to departure, which was a total 50 minutes from when my other plane touched down. It was impossible. But this was made with an inner layer of reinforced concrete, okay? So let's remember that. And the span, it was a decent sized span, but it's really nothing that hadn't been accomplished before, and I'll show you. So we're going to jump around in time, but look at just as a reference point, the Institute The Art Institute of Chicago, as pictured in 1900, was constructed for I think it was the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition. How much concrete was used there? Well, I find it interesting the roadways and the sidewalks and the different parts of it that are possibly made out of concrete look very well done. As I pointed out in other videos, like the one I made about Jamaica, the concrete there was really superb. And the sidewalks, it was perfection. And I'm thinking these photos were taken circa 1880 in Jamaica that I was presenting in that video. Jamaican Fake History Mon was the name of it. I marveled at the curbs and the sidewalks and everything that was made of concrete there. So there's this Orly aircraft hangar not too far from Paris. This is 1924, and this uses reinforced concrete, I believe. But the spans are tremendous. So it has vaulted aisles over 300 meters long, 60 high. They're parabolic arcs, okay? And that's something really, really amazing. It's an interesting architectural example of a building technique that was supposedly new at the time. And you can see the construction happening. And the size of it, it's immense. Nothing the world hadn't seen before as far as size goes, in my opinion. There are hangars every bit as large from, for example, the 1893 Columbian Exposition, the World's Fair in Chicago. There was a building that I think housed dirigibles right off of Lake Michigan. I think it was called the Machinery or Mechanic Building, something like that. But every bit as large. But it was glass and steel, I believe. Yeah, just like the ones that burned down. You can see, yes, tremendous span. 300 foot wide. Did that say meters? I don't know. 300 foot wide, 200 foot high vaults. So, yeah, pretty significant. Let's look at some of these other domes. So the Florence Cathedral, 150 feet. And St. Peter's Dome, not quite. It's over 100, but not quite 150 feet. Then there's the Pantheon. Now, the Florence Cathedral was a brick dome. It's the largest brick. The Pantheon is the largest concrete dome, at least it's unreinforced concrete. And it's also, I think, possibly the oldest building in existence. It's unique also with the oculus, the opening at the top. So I talked about that in the previous video, and I don't want to repeat myself, but it doesn't make use of flying buttresses. It does have a 23-foot thick wall, and the dome starts at 70 feet high. That's 7 stories. That's really high. That is huge. I found this building. This is from Breslau, Germany, which is now Poland. It's now, it's got a different name. The city in Poland is Wrocław, Poland. But at the time, it was Breslau in 1913, when this reinforced concrete Jahrhunderthalle of Breslau was designed by Mr. Berg, M. Berg, and detailed by the city engineers of Breslau. This dome has a clear span of 65 meters. 65 meters, 213 feet. That's tremendous. And there it is from the outside. I don't know what that building is, but there it is as seen from the outside and from the inside. And I have more pictures of it. Look at this. Now, that is reinforced concrete, but 65 meters, that's incredible. Incredible. Amazing structure. Boys, they just don't make them like that anymore. It's amazing. 65 meter diameter. 18,600 cubic meters of concrete, 3,000 cubic meters of formwork, 600 tons of reinforcing iron, 130 tons of structural steel. Incredible. C'est incroyable. Now this is the Pantheon. All right. So here's from an architectural journal or article with, of course, mention to Brunelleschi's Brickwork Masonry, the improved cross-section of the double inner and outer skins linked by diaphragms. It's an ingenious pattern of brickwork bonding that was adopted to ensure satisfactory composite action. Given the span involved and certain other constraints, such as that the dome had to sit on an octagonal drum, it's difficult to imagine any other form that would have been feasible structurally. Well, how could they have imagined that form could be in the first place? This memorable work of architecture is therefore an example of genuine high tech. The overall form was determined from structural considerations and not compromised for visual effect. The moldability of reinforced concrete greatly extended the potential for increasing the efficiency with which a dome or vault can resist bending movement caused by semi-form active load patterns. It gets a little technical. So they mention in England St. Pancras Station. Not pancreas, it's Pancras. In London, built in 1868 by one William Bill Barlow and one R.M. Ordish, with a span of 240 feet or 73 meters. And then they mention, again, this Galerie des Marchés for the Paris exhibition of 1889 by Conteman and Duterre, spanned 374 feet or 114 meters. But that's not concrete. St. Pancras wasn't either, but it has quite a span. All right. So I thought about the Hagia Sophia because that dome is absolutely enormous, but that's only 32 meters cross-section. Hagia Sophia, Hagia Sophia. However, they spell it, whatever. And the U.S. Capitol Dome ain't that much of a big deal either, with only 27.4 meters diameter, although it's huge. As an aside, the Montreal Dome in Quebec, Canada, is interesting because it has a very large span. But unfortunately, in 20 May 1976, during structural renovations, a fire burned away the building's transparent acrylic bubble, but the steel truss structure remained. It's now an interactive, interpretive museum showcasing and exploring the water ecosystems. The museum presents exhibitions about environmental issues related to water, climate change, air, ecotechnologies, and sustainable development. Oh, wow. Oh. Well, its span's huge, but it's 76 meters. And that's a truss structure consisting of triangular and hexagonal steel units covered by acrylic sheeting. It's close to being a jewel at night. So anyway, now we're going to talk about pre-war Germany's Reichstag building. The Reichstag. Okay. And inside the Reichstag, I think this is from inside the Reichstag, and I like to say that. This chandelier seems very old world tech to me. Doesn't look like it was just holding candles a few decades earlier. No. Those lights are part of the design. And you don't even see wires. You'd think if things were retrofitted with electrical lights that they would be janky wires hanging all around, just like I have in my home in 2022. Because I like to put lights and different things in places that just aren't normally, didn't have it before. And so when I put it there, I have to run electricity to it. So I have these wires going all around like spaghetti. And here is a ceiling light, I think from the same building. And that is, that's beautiful, the detail. And yeah, this, I believe, is concrete. It's not carved stone. So again, it kind of looks like blocks on the top, but would it be? And then how would they be interlocking? Like, I don't even know. In some cases, I wonder what holds them up. What are these seams that you see, and why are the seams both vertical and then horizontal? What's holding all this stuff up? I don't see any wires. So they drilled through after the fact? Wouldn't it split? I have lots of questions. I wish I could talk to somebody who worked on the building. Okay, this is completely unrelated, but I stumbled across it. This General Carte de Mars, okay, Jupiter, and it shows the where the Martians paddle their canoes on the canals of Mars. You can see here all the various interconnecting canals on Mars, and there on Jupiter, the great red spot didn't exist when this photo was taken in the late 1800s or early 1903 or something like that. 1899 at the bottom, Jupiter, and there's no great red spot. No great red spot. Maybe it was spinning around and it was on the other side of Jupiter. Perhaps it was on the other side of Jupiter at the time. But it's a round ball, even though the stripes are straight and parallel. It's a ball. Just like on the ball of Mars, there are canals and underwater, under ice and structures. Anyway, this back into, it could be Breslau again, but I think this is probably Berlin on top of the Reichstag, but I'm not sure. Either way, it doesn't even matter. What is this pole? Is it a telescoping? That looks like an antenna. A telescoping antenna. And was it to catch dirigibles? We know the Germans used them a lot. The artwork up there is just fantastic. Even elements that nobody would be able to see from the ground. I guess from the windows up there, you could see like the back side of that soldier or whatever it is on the bottom left. But I look at these lights also on the bottom left. They're amazing. Yes. Were they lights? I think they were. Those are lanterns. They're non-functional now. You don't see any writing. There's some spaces where there could be writing. It says Bayern on the top there. And then, yeah, they have crowns at the top. Fascinating. But why isn't there writing in all these little windows? The 3 windows on the top, and then on the left, they have writing and a number, but then they just have like blank spaces on the right. Oh, it's interesting, at least. The Reichstag. Yeah, I think that was the Reichstag. You can see that. It's like a battlement or something on the left. The flagpole. Yeah, right. But this has a lantern on the top, much like the Florence brick dome. But the span, 40 meters. Pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. But again, this is built supposedly in the 1800s, and you have the Pantheon. It's really probably one of the oldest structurally intact buildings in the world, and it's built with a distance that is just incredible. I just threw this in here. I don't know the span of this. It has to be huge, but this is the observatory with this Yerkes telescope, which is as large of a telescope as you can get due to optics and the physics of light through optical lenses. You can only have a telescope with magnification approaching what the Yerkes telescope does. So this is it, boys. This was the height that you can't... Boys, it just doesn't get any better than this. And this was featured, I think it was shown, brought to the World Columbian Exposition. It was just one of these, it looked tiny inside of the huge building where it was housed, the machinery building or whatever it was at the expo, at the Columbian World's Fair. This thing, I mean, can you imagine walking in that building and you see the immense size inside and you see it from a distance and it looks like this, wow, that's a big telescope. And then you approach it and you get close to it and you can see how absolutely huge it is.
Check this out. So I came across this, and this is a photograph, but then watch. Go up here and you zoom in, because this caught my eye, and then that's a drawing, folks. That is nothing but a drawing at that point. When does it stop being a drawing here? Okay, there in the foreground. Much of this is hand-drawn. This is a photograph here. This part, not all of it, but that stairway, it's a drawing. Much of it is a drawing. Wow. Look at how it goes across with those mirrors. What in the world is going on? That part's photographed, some of it in the background, that's photography. But over here, this is all drawing. That's all hand animation. The flags for sure.
Okay, well, this is for another video, but these talkies, telephony, as imagined in France in 1910. But I was watching Howdy Mikowski, and he was talking about these expos and the lights. And I have something to show about this light there, because this was captured on video producing an energy field, and I'll show that to you. The celestial globe, so he mentioned that, and how this had a concrete structure to it that broke and fell down. This is in the Paris exposition, I think. And so that's what you see. They're covering it up. But the celestial globe, it's a kind of a neat idea. But that was on the, is it the Champs de Mars? Champs des Mars. Champs de Mars. Or is that along, yeah. Much of Paris World's Fairs were along the Champs-Élysées. But that's so that's it. That's the last slide here. So what do you think? Concrete? Did it start? The reason they say it was so good with the building, the oldest building, the Pantheon, 2,000 years old, they can't replicate it. They say because it was built with a special kind of concrete made from the ash of a volcano that had erupted previously, and that ash, it's all used up. You can't get there from here anymore. That's all that ash done get used up, boys. It's gone. It's all gone. That dog don't hunt. You can't make it anymore. No, I'm going to make a unreinforced concrete dome the size of the Pantheon. No, Nemo. Stop. You can't do it. You can't. You think you can do these things, Nemo, but you can't. You can't. Shut up, Marlin. Anyway. Shark bait. Ooh ha ha. All right. Well, on that, I guess I'll end the video. I'll end the video with that. Shark bait. Ooh ha ha.